The saloon doors crashed open with enough force to shake the whiskey bottles behind the bar. Every head turned. He stepped inside without a swagger, just a straight-backed man with ice in his eyes and a promise in his stare. They called him the Whisper, a man known not for gunfire, but for the sentence he spoke just before death. "Today's not your day." And as he walked past the patrons, their murmurs fell silent. They recognized that moment, felt it in their bones. At the far end of the saloon, 3 gunslingers sat in shadow. One sneered, another stiffened, the third froze mid-breath. Because no one dared ask who the Whisper was, only what he meant. He slid onto a stool, his boot resting beside his holster. Slowly, he ordered coffee and set it down with deliberate calm. The barkeep's hand trembled, with just that espresso cup on the counter. Every eye focused on him, every breath held tight, every heartbeat sounded in the hush. Then he leaned back. And, with that signature slow drawl, like the last bullet in a .45, he spoke. "Ever notice how you come across someone once in a while you shouldn't have? That's me." Silence hit like a gunshot. It wasn't bravado. It was a fact. The saloon doors swung shut behind him, and in that second, every man inside knew this was more than a standoff. This was destiny. Time didn't move in the saloon. Sat heavy on the floorboards like dust that had been waiting for a storm. The 3 men at the corner table, Johnny Dale, a bounty killer with a silver tooth and no mercy, Morgan Pike, ex-Confederate, and twice hanged but never buried, and Eli the Laugher Boone, who'd slit throats with a grin, didn't speak. But they all knew why the Whisper had come, and none of them dared to ask. Because you didn't ask a ghost what brought it back. You just waited to see who it came for. Johnny's fingers tapped near his holster, rhythm slow like he was counting seconds. Morgan lifted a glass, but his eyes never left the man at the bar. Eli grinned, but even his crooked smile seemed forced, like he was hoping the devil would pass him over if he smiled just right. They'd all heard stories about a drifter who'd outdraw 5 men at once, a man who didn't shout or shake, just stared before he killed. They never thought he was real, yet here he was, sipping black coffee like it was communion. The barkeep, old and wiser than most, knew better than to speak. He didn't even wipe the counter. He just watched the Whisper, watched the way. His coat hung low over his holster, and how his shoulders never moved unless they had to. He'd seen men like this once before, only once right before they made history in blood. Then the Whisper turned just slightly, his boots scraping on the floor, loud enough to make Johnny's hand twitch. 1 inch, 1 sound, 1 signal, and that's when the Whisper spoke again. Low, steady, soaked in threat. 3 of you. 1 of me. So either I'm the fool, or someone here lied about being a killer. A gust of wind banged against the saloon doors. No one moved. Out in the street, a dog howled inside. The storm was just beginning. You could hear the dust settle on the windowsill. That's how quiet it got. The air in the saloon felt thick, not with heat, but with the weight of unspoken truths in too many dead men's names. No one dared take a sip. No chair creaked. No card shuffled. The piano player's hands hovered, frozen above the keys, knowing even a note might trigger bullets. Johnny Dale adjusted his hat the same. Black felt hat he wore when he buried the sheriff of El Paso with a shot to the neck. Morgan Pike, his eyes cold as coffin nails, let his hand dangle just near his revolver, and Eli Boone, he did what devils do best, smile. But even that twisted grin couldn't hide the tremble in his thumb, and the Whisper. He didn't blink. He simply reached into his coat, slow as dusk, and pulled out something unexpected. Not a gun, not a badge, not a bullet. A matchstick. He struck it against the counter with a soft rasp, the flame flickering against his face, casting shadows beneath his eyes that made him look half men, half reckoning. He lit a thin cigar, took 1 drag, and exhaled calmly, the smoke curling upward, like a signal from the gallows. Then, without turning, he muttered, "There's a truth you learn out here. Real killers don't brag, they bury." That line cut sharper than any knife. It wasn't said to insult. It was said to confirm what all 3 of them already feared. One of them wasn't going to walk out of that room. It's the worst part. The Whisper already knew which one. Morgan Pike suddenly leaned forward, trying to break the silence with his gravel-thick voice. "I don't know who you think you're messing with, but there ain't no law behind you here. You're just another man with a death wish." The Whisper turned his head, slow like a sun setting. His eyes locked onto Morgan's. Not a death wish. It's good memory. A second passed. Then another. Then a third. Morgan moved his hand. That was his last mistake. Boom. One shot. Cleaned the room. Erupted in screams and gasps. Chairs flipping glasses. Shattering, but only one body fell. Morgan Pike hit the floor, eyes wide in shock, blood pooling into the cracks between floorboards. His gun never cleared leather. Johnny Dale stood halfway up, unsure whether to draw or run. Eli Boone's grin vanished, as if it had been peeled from his face. And the Whisper, he just flicked the ash from his cigar. Two left. For a moment, everything went still again, as if the very walls of the saloon had to catch their breath. Morgan Pike's body lay sprawled across the floorboards, eyes wide open. One hand still hovering just above his holster like he died mid-thought. The room didn't scream this time. It mourned in silence. Because now, everyone knew. This wasn't just a man with a fast draw. This was judgment on two legs. Johnny Dale's face had lost its color. His usual cockiness faded as quickly as Morgan's. Last breath. He had drawn on bounty hunters, gamblers, even us marshals. But this was something else. The Whisper didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't miss. He didn't shoot to win. He shot to end Eli, the laugher Boone knew. Longer smiled. His beady eyes darted between the Whisper and Johnny, calculating, sweating. He began to reach slowly for the bottle on the table, just enough to mask the motion of his fingers moving toward his belt. That's when the Whisper finally turned around fully. Boots grinding softly over blood-stained wood, the cigar still burning. Low in the corner of his mouth, he wasn't fast, he wasn't flashy. He just moved like a man who'd already decided who deserved to die. "You ever wonder what makes a man draw?" he asked aloud, voice steady and calm, like he was reading scripture in a church. No one answered. "They didn't need to," he continued, his voice slow and sharp, as if each word was its own warning. "Some do it for fear, some for pride, some 'cause they think no one's watching." He took another step closer, right past Morgan's body, never looking down. "But me? I draw when I remember who screamed the loudest." Johnny's hand twitched, too late. The Whisper drew. Boom. Another single thundering shot. It. Johnny Dale's. Chest jerked as the bullet found its home. He staggered backward, crashing into the table behind him, bottles smashing, glass flying. His body slid to the floor like a rag soaked in regret. Two down. The Whisper looked toward Eli Boone, who hadn't moved. Not a muscle. Eli's voice broke. "Wasn't me. ... It was Morgan's job. I didn't even touch her. ... The room went still again, and then the Whisper finally spoke something no one expected. "Then you'll live. But you'll carry their names with you, every night, every drink, every mirror." Eli nodded frantically, tears welling up. Years of cruelty washing off him like old dirt. The Whisper holstered his revolver, calm, clean, cold. Then he walked back to the bar, took one last sip of his no-cold coffee, and left a silver coin beside. The cup, as he walked out the saloon doors, the wind followed him. So did the silence. No applause, no thanks, no glory. Just the echo of justice served. The saloon doors creaked shut behind him. Outside, the world hadn't changed. The same wind rustled the same dying trees, and the same dusty road stretched toward a horizon that promised nothing but more miles. Odd. But for those inside, nothing would ever be the same again. The Whisper walked slow, not out of weariness, but because men like him didn't rush. He'd done what he came for. Justice, the kind that didn't wear a badge, didn't wait for a courtroom, didn't need a jury, just memory, a loaded gun, and the will to face ghosts without flinching. Behind him, the barkeep finally dared to exhale. Chairs creaked as townsfolk unfroze from their terror. Eli Boone sat hunched in a corner, breathing like he'd just survived a fire. His face pale and wet, a man who knew he'd escaped the hangman's rope but not the weight of guilt. No. One chased after the whisper. No one thanked him. He wouldn't have wanted it anyway. He didn't believe in heroes, and he never called himself one. But stories don't ask permission to be told. By sundown, the tale had already begun to spread. By nightfall, travelers at the next town over were asking if it was true that a man in a duster walked into the saloon at Grey Rock and killed 2 outlaws with a single bullet each. Like he'd seen it all in a dream. They said he didn't run, didn't yell, didn't even breathe heavy, just looked, spoke, and shot. They called him different names: the Ghost, the Smoke, the Pale One. But those who'd seen him knew the truth. He was the Whisper, because you never saw him coming. Long after he was gone, you still heard him.